Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, a podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and this is not just another episode. This is episode 60. So we will get to our great guest in just a second. I want to thank you for being part of this journey. We have done this together, the community of listeners, the guests that we're providing, the information, the entertainment, the energy. That is the goal of the podcast. If you could fill out a review or recommend this to just one person today, that would be fantastic. Suzy Whaley. You recognize that name, and I'm going to tell you why. You know what? She was just inducted into the PGA America's Hall of Fame in 2023. She is the president of Golf Nation. She will explain her role and the great goals and origin of her company. And almost 23 years she spent at the PGA of America. She also has been a golf instructor for the better part of 3 decades. And I'll tell you what, that is where her passion lies, helping others. She has a growth mindset. You will hear throughout this conversation inspiration, energy, constant learning, concepts that we talk about each and every week on the show. Suzy is a great story. She will also take us behind the scenes of when she competed in the Greater Hartford Open in 2003, the first female to compete in a men's tour in 58 years. You have to hear this story. This conversation is rich. I'm glad you're here. It begins now with Suzy Whaley. Suzy, so wonderful to see you. So great to have you. I really appreciate it. How are you doing? Did you get on the links today? You knew that was going to be my first question, for goodness sakes.
I haven't, and it's spectacular here today. It's like a beautiful 70-degree day. You wait for this all year in Florida, and I haven't had a chance to go out yet, but later on.
So how often do you play the game? I mean, you're instructing all the time. You're immersed in the sport itself, but how often do you get to just go out and enjoy the sport?
Yeah, not as often as I would like anymore, but I still love to play. We live off of a golf course, so we try to get in a few holes as many times as we can. I'm literally, I don't know, less than a mile from a driving range that I can use. So there's no excuses there. I just, I don't get out as much as I would like, but our family loves to play golf. So when we can, we do it.
And Suzy, you and I talked in preparation for today and our mutual love of the game. Obviously, you've devoted your life to it, and I've told you how it has meant so much to me. I think the game is just a beautiful sport, and it reveals character and helps you develop character. Do you still love it as much as you did as a child when you said you played a lot with your mom in those special moments? Tell me about your relationship with the sport itself and where you are in life right now.
Yeah, I was so fortunate that growing up, I lived in a household that loved sport and I love sport. So it mirrored each other. And my mom was an avid golfer. I literally grew up in Syracuse, New York, where it snowed 9 months of the year, or at least it felt that way. So we had 3 or 4 months to play golf. And I started by chance. My older sister, my mom tried to start her. She didn't love it. She was a great swimmer, loved to be at the pool. And I was at the pool and they were headed over to the driving range and invited me to join them. And I went over in my swimsuit. My mom, of course, was called off the course immediately because her daughter was not in dress code. And instead of scolding me, my mom asked me if I liked it. And I told her I loved it. And from then on, it became this wonderful time spent with my mom, one-on-one time where women weren't invited or celebrated at golf courses. That's just a sign of the times. It's no judgment statement. It's just the way it was. So it was very little amount of time you could get access on course as a junior girl golfer. So when my mom and I had the opportunity to go out and play, I was there nonstop. I always had this love for it. I loved the challenge of it. I wasn't good at it. My very first 9 holes, I kept score. I shot a 94. I brought it home to my grandfather, who I was just exuberant by the fact that I broke 10 on every hole. I averaged less than 10, and I thought that was fabulous. And that, to me, is a reminder of how I was introduced to the game. It wasn't about performance. It was about enjoyment. And we were allowed to go out by ourselves and with our friends, and it was just a great time. And it wasn't because I had just a proficient talent at birth. It was because I was allowed to enjoy it at my own level, in my own time, and fall in love with the game first. And when you do that, you tend to get good at the game.
So you just had self-admitted that you weren't born with extraordinary talent, so you honed it. So what did that look like? hours and hours, I assume, on the range, around the putting green, the practice putting green. How dedicated were you in those early days? Or were you still, having fun with your friends and joking around? Like, what was your demeanor in those early days approaching the game?
No, I was dedicated. I wanted to beat my mom. So for me, competition, that was inborn in me,
Got it.
for sure. But the talent part of it, was I athletic? Yes. Did I have good eye hand skills? Yes. But you're not just born playing great golf. And so for me, I had a golf professional named Joe Tesori, a PGA professional who I cherish to this day, who mentored me and supported me and was my first boss, hired me at the driving range. But I would get one bucket of balls the day that I would work for free. And instead of just hitting them, I would take them to putt and chip for hours. I would take them around the pitching area because I wanted to save them. So, I just think there was this motivation and love for the game, that about the journey of getting better. That's what motivated me. That's what Joe Tesori taught me. My mom taught me. It was the challenge of maybe you can get that tomorrow. And I love the success of getting something that I failed at miserably multiple times and then having that one time where I got it.
And then you started to compete and win, and you got to the highest level. Can you take us through that process when you started to realize, hey, college and then the LPGA, things started to become realistic and clear to you? How was that process?
Yeah, I think it's always surprising. People think I wanted to be a golf professional my whole life. I did not. I wanted to be an Olympian. I was a ski racer first and a golfer second. And, as I navigated through high school, I played golf in championship tournaments, but it wasn't like today where there was multiple junior events you could participate in. There was a state championship for juniors that for girls. There was an amateur championship that you could participate in as a junior girl. And then there was the PGA Junior, which was a national championship, and the USGA, which was a national championship. Really four opportunities to showcase your skills against other girls your age. So few and far between. And I played in a boys' high school golf team because that was the only option where I grew up. I grew up in a household without barriers for gender. So my mom and dad said, if you want to play golf in high school, you'll have to make the boys' team. And that's what I did. But in those tournaments, I played well enough to get some attention to get recruited for college. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on a full scholarship for golf and loved it, but was not the best on the team until my senior year. My senior year, I started to play really well. I started to take it seriously. I started to work harder at it. I worked with a sports psychologist that worked for the university named Dr. Richard Koop, who is a famous sports psychologist who's passed away now. But he helped me understand some of my challenges in tournament play, as ski racing was a 45-second endeavor to a minute and a half, depending on the discipline, whether it was slalom or giant slalom. I was a 4.5 hour golf round in comparison to the two. Ski racing, I listened to the B-52s in the bus on the way over. Golf, you're trying to walk out patient and calm with no emotion. Those two things just collided for me when I played championship golf. And inevitably, I would always start out with a very poor hole. He taught me really how to manage that and how to think about that and how to understand that. And because of that, I ended up graduating. We went to the national championship, and I was going to go to law school. And so I played in the LPGA championship as an amateur, played well. Had two gentlemen approach me to sponsor me to go to tour school, which is how you earn your status to play on the LPGA. And I went home and told my parents, I'm not going to go to law school. I'm going to go to tour school. And I made it. I made it through tour school and secured an LPGA card. And it really was very organic the way I turned into a professional golfer, which now I can't imagine it going any other way. I met my husband through professional golf. I have these two incredible children because of it. I've had a career that spanned multiple disciplines within the industry because of it, and I love it.
So I want to get to your career because it is fascinating and is so diverse, and I love the trajectory and the ascension that you've had. But let's talk about, you just brought up something so interesting. And on this podcast, we uncover like the core of people, right? And they have these moments. You said like a catalyst moment that changed your life. Golf has given you so much.
Mm-hmm.
It was meeting with that psychologist, right? You're a competitive person. You admit that. We could see that in listening to you.
Yeah.
You're a ski racer, right? And that's a high adrenaline. Whereas golf, when you
Yeah.
hit that first hole, if you put that energy, as just as you beautifully articulated, you can double bogey because you're thinking and you're moving quicker and the tempo of your swing, in essence. I'm
Yeah.
telling the pro this, but you know it better than me. How difficult was that to channel that calmness? And then you've used it, it seems, as a superpower since then. But I
Yeah.
think there's people out there that would love to know those mechanisms, like going into a meeting hot or going
Yeah.
into a job
I still
interview,
do. I still
right?
do.
Right?
I just run like people. I just have a high level of energy. Always
Right.
have. And when I hit the bed at night, I'm done. Right. So I had this high level of physicality that golf kind of turned that down. And so I didn't know what to do with all this energy. And inevitably, I would just, to your point, come to the tee hot. I would talk too fast, walk too fast, make decisions too quickly. And I'm not advocating slow play, but I was so quick, and I still am today. That when I was training for the GHO, which is the PGA Tour event I qualified for and played in as the second female to ever qualify for one, I also worked with Dr. Richard Koop. And we worked incredibly hard on timing my pre-shot routine because we knew I would walk in hot. And so I learned how to navigate that moment in time of focus and bring it down to about 18 seconds. You have 45 seconds to the golf ball, so 18 doesn't seem like a lot. But I was like at 11 when we were timing things. So I think everybody has to know their own cycle, the way their body works. I think you have to know yourself. I think you have to be honest with yourself. I went through breathing exercises, meditation exercises, imagery and focusing drills, mental acuity drills, things that would bring me back to center. And when I say center, whatever I'm thinking about or working on, whether it's a speech, a keynote, whether it's a business presentation or a proposal I'm drafting, whether it's a lesson, whatever it is, I had to learn how to bring myself back to my own shoes and in the spot I was in the moment. The elite of the elite that I've ever had the opportunity to speak with in sport, they always come back to that focus, that flow, the state of mind that they're in the moment they're in it, where it's just happening. There's no worry about failure. There's no fear of failure. And I think when you can get there in whatever you're doing, you just have so much joy in what you're doing.
So let's connect that to what you alluded to, the Greater Hartford Open back in 2003, when you were the first woman to compete in a PGA event in 58 years. How did you pull that off? Not just your golf scores, but your state of mind and your preparedness and your tenacity and wherewithal to compete in that event.
Yeah, I've done so many keynotes about this because I think it's important for people to understand you never do something like that by yourself. It's an impossibility, in my opinion. I surrounded myself with a team of people that were experts. So I had an expert caddy. I had an expert professional helping me with my game, which happened to be my husband. I had Dr. Richard Koop, a sports psychologist. I had friends and family, which were the other side of the team, that were supporting me. I had two young daughters that were 8 and 6. I had a full-time job as a head golf professional. So my boss supported me with extra staff and time to practice. My friends picked my children up from school and took them to doctor's appointments so that I could work out 3 hours a day, so that I could then go to work and then practice 3 hours a day and then come home and see my children before they were tucked into bed. And it was 9 months of that every single day. So the work was incredibly disciplined, incredibly hard, and challenging. But the entire time I had clear objectives to what I was trying to accomplish and the reason I chose to play. And I stuck to those message points. I stuck to that North Star. I know people use that word a lot. And so I think sometimes it's not taken as seriously as it should be. But I've always believed in that. If you can really understand your target and your objective, and you put your preparation in and you surround yourself with people who support you, and the outside noise is then quieted, which is very difficult to do, you then have an opportunity to reach your goal. But if you don't reach your goal, you can hold your head high, knowing that you did everything in your power to do the performance, the job, whatever it is that you're striking out to do, to the best of your ability. Because I knew things were going to get in the way. I knew things weren't always going to be perfect or go my way in the days that I played. but I was going to have addressed them. I was going to have practiced. I was going to have prepared that moment every single day I could until that moment came. And so I didn't walk into that event feeling unprepared. I walked into that event extremely nervous, but it was incredible energy that was positive, and I had learned how to channel that thanks to the people that were around me to try to perform the best I could in a moment that was incredibly uncomfortable. Right. So I always tell people, you have to get used to being uncomfortable. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable places and situations that are out of your comfort zone to grow. And I knew that was going to be the case. And I'm proud of the way I performed. Do I wish I had beaten more men than I did? Yes, but I beat some, which was great. And I held to my objectives. I wanted my daughters to know that women could play golf anywhere with anyone. I wanted them to see me be brave and resilient and have hard work and grit and perseverance. And we talked about that at home at night. And I wanted them to see me not worry about the haters. And we didn't have social media then, but there were plenty of haters that didn't believe I should be in it or play in it. And we got letters to the house and nasty mail, and we had those conversations about people who matter and voices that matter in your goals and what you're trying to accomplish.
And is it safe to say, because you worked so hard in those 9 months up to it, as you just said, with a well rounded approach, psychologically, taking care of your mental health, physically, obviously, and then the game of golf itself, from that experience, how did that change you as a person? And you've alluded to some of that, but how did that provide a catalyst moment, perhaps, I'm assuming here, to the rest of your career? It must have really helped gain a tremendous perspective.
What it gave me after I finished that was a career in broadcasting. I had done over 2,500 interviews over the course of that 9 months from all over the world. I went on multiple shows, CBS Morning Show, Today Show, and had a lot of opportunity to speak for corporations who wanted to hear my story and how I was preparing. And so it trained me to be in front of people. It trained me to be in front of an audience. It trained me to deliver a message that was specific and pointed, and that gave people some hope and inspired people. And so for me, I had this unbelievable opportunity to go to work in television. And then I went back to coaching and teaching because I loved it so much and missed it, but I incorporated that into my commentating. And then as I went through the governance rules at the PGA of America, which is the largest sports association in the world, I could always lean on some of those lessons. I could lean on the people that I had met in the companies that I had the opportunity to spend time with, the leaders, the female and the male leaders who taught me so much, not only about business and my own personal business, but about leadership itself, about managing other people, about building a culture and creating a culture. And I used all of those tools as best I could as I started to organically go through the chairs at the PGA of America, ultimately becoming the president of the PGA of America. So I would tell you, had I not played in the GHO, would all of that have happened? People have asked me that over and over. I can't say, but I can tell you that having played in it, having done what I did since it certainly made it easier to take the risk to run in an organization that's 96% male. And when you're the only one that looks like you in the room, that's a generalization because I wasn't the only one, but when there's very few of you, it takes some guts and some bravery to stand up and say, I'm just as prepared as you, and I can do this job too. And I wasn't going to just get their vote. I had to earn it. And I knew I could earn it, and I knew I was qualified. But it was a risk, and I was willing to take it because I didn't fear losing.
So, Suzy, as an executive at the PGA, and as you were saying, you had a number of chairs there. How often did you say, I've been through something like this? It might have been on the ninth hole of said golf course, or it might have been in a training session or with the psychologist or whatever the case may be in the weight room. It's, failing, trying, experimenting. How often did you look at your golf career and that directly applied those lessons and skills to what you did in quote unquote the boardroom? I'm oversimplifying. But my goodness, all those interviews you did with communicating and understanding yourself on the golf course. Golf, as you know, I'm telling you, is a lesson in self-awareness.
Yeah.
Are you going to play it where it lies? Or are you going to pick it up and wipe it with the towel? Just as an example. So let me have you answer that, because I know you've probably given this more thought than all of us.
Yeah, it's funny. When I got initially in the boardroom at the PGA America at the local level, I wasn't a good board member. I really thought everything should be done the way I saw it. I knew I could navigate it, certain issues, maybe quicker and faster than really I could. I you know oversimplified most everything. And I had to learn how to work within a structure, and a staff alongside a volunteer, because we're all volunteers. Then when they're in the boardroom, a group of people who do what I do every day, that are in maybe a little different role than I'm in the industry, but are smart and savvy and have tons of experience. And I came in like I did from the ski racing course, right? I was like a bulldozer, man. I came in, we're going to do this, and this, not knowing any history, not understanding what had already been discussed, not looking through the budget, I was really pretty poor, to be honest with you. And thankfully, again, I've just been lucky to be surrounded by people who are willing to talk to me, who are willing to say after a meeting, hey, you know what, let's chat about what just went down and see if we can't navigate that a little differently next time. And that included my executive director, who was incredibly helpful to me. So it was really important for me to learn those tools locally. And once I navigated that and went to the national level, I can tell you I really made some of the same mistakes. But over time, you learn that persuasion is incredibly important in a boardroom. Humor is important in a boardroom. Uh, Listening is incredibly important in a boardroom. And I think the biggest thing that I came away with as a leader, and my growth as a leader, is there's so many different dimensions of diversity, and typically the world talks about gender or color as the only two. I mean, we all know this, but there's far greater dimensions. There's sexuality, there's cultural, there's where you grew up, what state you were in. There's even within the industry, we all have different roles, and that's diversity. And so learning that and understanding that when you have these differences in the room, when you have these dimensions of diversity that come together and form then a collaborative opinion on something and move forward with it, I have found in my tenure, the decision is always better for the overall impact on the organization or the objective you were trying to do. Will allow people to objectively sit in that disagreement, pay attention to it, put yourself in their seat, understand where they're coming from instead of thinking about what you're going to say next, actually participating and listening. I found that I became a far more successful leader when I treated a room with that respect than when I came in as a person who just thought they knew it all and could get it done themselves.
So you've done that work, you've had that self-awareness and that realization, and you articulated it wonderfully. And anyone listening right now in similar situations, an emerging leader, right, or somebody who's a VP about to be an SVP, and they walk into rooms and they think, I'm right 9 out of 10 times. I'm right most of the time. How many times, because you're a teacher at heart, right? You teach, you've won awards as a golf instructor. And I wish we had 2 hours just to talk about that alone.
Yeah.
But Suzy, when you would mentor people that are emerging leaders and you saw maybe yourself before you had these realizations as you as a better listener and more empathic, right? And understanding that, hey, it's better just to listen and glean information and then make a collective decision that benefits everybody. How would you mentor folks that you maybe saw yourself, an earlier version of yourself, in them?
I always share with young leaders that culture matters. It's the hardest thing to change, but it's one of the most important things in my tenure that has made a difference to us getting things accomplished strategically and offering directives to a group of people who actually have to operationally deliver those objectives. So as you sit there and you think about, okay, what kind of leader do I want to be, or what kind of leader am I? I think there's a growth to that too. I think people put themselves in labels. They say, oh, I'm a directive leader, I'm a collaborative. And that might be when you're 25. right? But when you're 35, you might find that you've taken on some traits that are a little different than that. So, number one, I would tell young leaders to let themselves learn how to lead, to allow themselves some errors and some mistakes, to ask way more questions before a meeting than during the meeting, to do your homework and your preparation on historical perspective. Find the people in the room who have talked about this before, and then get yourself organized so that when you come into a meeting, you have very specific things you'd like to talk about based on the agenda. And if somebody's already talked about it, it doesn't need to be said again. If they have the same opinion as you, do not feel you have to repeat exactly what somebody else says. And that was me, right, in the very beginning. And what I found was really helpful. A gentleman named Asuka Nakahara, who's a professor at Wharton, is one of my mentors. And he sat next to me for 3 years in the boardroom. And he could see me leaning forward in my chair, which is my tell that I'm coming at you, right? And he would just very calmly put his hand down next to me on the table, and he would say, maybe just write it down. And he'd say it very quietly, and I would write down whatever I wanted to say, and inevitably, everything that I wrote down pretty much would get answered without me having to always have my hand up, without me having to all of a sudden be that person in the room that everybody says, oh, here she goes again. Instead, if I had something left, I could wrap up the conversation at the end, bringing in, because I took notes, what had been said, what perhaps the direction that I heard we were going to go, and then what I believe still hadn't been answered. And for me, that was one of the greatest lessons to be learned in the boardroom, because it was so much more effective as a leader than it was me just constantly raising my hand and leaning in. So you have a voice and you have a seat at the table. You need to use it, but using it effectively takes practice.
All right, I got two more for you. We got the all-star moments at the end, but before we get there, I want to ask you about the Golf Nation. Golf Nation, you're the president.
Yep.
Tell us about that. Are you into
Golf
it?
Nation is a over-the-top television digital streaming channel, OTT channel. We also have a fast channel on Vizio, a partnership with Vizio Television. So the apps, the smart apps that are at the bottom of your screen, Golf Nation is one of those. But we're a lifestyle and entertainment channel. So think of us as Netflix meets QVC. Think of us as the Food Network, but for golf. Think of us as HGTV, but for golf. So we want to showcase everyone that's in the game that doesn't necessarily see themselves in the game through media currently. We aren't ignoring championships, but championship rights are typically bought and sold already through 2040. So what we're showing is the food, the beverage, the travel, the entertainment, the fun of the game, the charity components of the game. And I'm excited to be a part of it because we get to highlight and invite everyone to the game because it's right through their phone or through the television. What makes us different is we're shoppable. So it's not a QR code. We're shoppable just with your remote. So while you're watching video, you're never interrupted. You can pop the products up that are on the screen and purchase them. You can pop the charity up and purchase that, but your video never stops running. So we're shoppable commerce. And it's super cool. So check us out at golfnation.com, and on your Android, we have an app, and the iOS app will be out January.
I was almost late to the podcast because I was enjoying the video so much. So there's my transparent moment. All right, rapid fire. Here we go. And then we'll close this out, Suzy. This has been great. Okay. Here we go. 7 questions. First thought, best thought. Here we go. Number 1, how do you deal with adversity?
With humor.
2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Exercise.
3, what does never give up mean to you?
No matter what happens, you have to keep going and try again.
4, what is the value of collaboration?
Everything. I don't get anything done without collaborating with another person or somebody.
5, you've hired a lot of people throughout the course of your career. What do you look for in an ideal person that could join the team?
Energy and enthusiasm. I can teach you everything else.
6, describe yourself as a leader in 1 sentence.
Progressive. I'm a progressive leader that is true and loyal and inspired by other people. My leadership style is about making sure other people succeed.
Love it. Last one. I can't wait to hear your answer to this. I've enjoyed all of them, but this one's interesting. Manager versus leader.
I would say leader. I mean, manager, you have to be a manager as a leader. But leader incorporates so much more than just management. And I love the challenge of all of it.
Awesome. Suzy, this has been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
And we thank Suzy very much for being on the show. The metaphor with golf, this part of it that applies to our lives, other sports, or whatever we're doing. The ability to slow down. If you get out of your car and you run to the first tee at a golf course and you don't stretch and you don't warm up and you don't think about what you're trying to do that day, you probably will not have a great round. But if you slow down, stretch, putt a little bit, and think about your intention for the day, how are you going to play? How are you going to take a deep breath and make sure that you're concentrating on your alignment, swing, and where you're going with the golf ball to the extent that we all can as amateurs? I thought that was fascinating. It's the same as going into a meeting. What are you going to accomplish? You're just going to go in and wing it, or are you going to stop, think about the agenda, take a deep breath, and go into the meeting with a plan? Fascinating conversation with Suzy. You can see why she's in the PGA America's Hall of Fame. Thank you, everybody, for being part of Keep the Line Moving. We'll see you next week with another great guest. Have a great week, everyone. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal, have a great week, everybody.